There are things out there, creatures, monsters, ghouls and spirits, beings that fall outside the realm of visible truth, beyond the confines of our basic reality. They lurk in the dark, haunt the recesses of our minds, and stir our curiosity in the unusual and weird. They are taboo topics, stories that we tell around the campfire and folklore passed down from our ancestors. We've been taught that these things don't exist, that they are merely myth and legend. Or are they? Welcome to the Occult Archives. I'm your host and spooky librarian, E.M. Moon, but feel free to refer to me as E. Here lies a space beyond all spaces, a library full of arcane information enough to drive any normal person mad. If you can think of it, if you can question it, the archives probably have what you seek. "667 Children of the Beast, Issue Number 3, Transformation. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make our world." Buddha. June 6th, 2016. Adam Bodine. "Get her over here." Henri directed everyone over to a table in the back room where he did his healing work. Nate cleared the space of any clutter as I set Violet on the stiff cushioned top of the massage table. She had been out cold the whole ride back from the cemetery and hadn't stirred once. We had checked her pulse several times and it was strong, but she had yet to make a sound. "I just can't get over your face." Nate's mouth was screwed up to one side as he stared at me. "The face bothers you, but this doesn't?" I held my arms up for Nate to get a good look at the scorched flesh pulsating with a smoldering orange glow. "That's just nauseating." Nate turned his attention away. Henri had left the room and returned with a bowl of herbs and resins that he lit ablaze and trailed under Violet's nose. She jerked, and when she did, the whole room jerked with her. Henri toppled over the table, Nate fell backward and smacked his head against the wall, and I lunged forward towards Violet's head. "Jesus Christ, what the fuck?" Nate cursed loudly, rubbing at the knot that was forming on the back of his head. Henri was trying to gather the embers from the burning coal that had been in the bowl as he responded. "You need to be a bit less blasphemous in this situation." I hadn't realized that my hands were on the sides of Violet's face. I was standing above her and must have caught myself before I smothered her. My hands were on her face. They were on her face, yet her skin didn't scald under my touch. That third eye stared up at me, but Violet's original eyes were still closed. "Is she okay?" Henri brought the bowl back over near her face. Nate braced himself in the corner and waited for another jolt. "She's fine," I responded absentmindedly. Henri brought the incense to her nose again, but this time the room didn't just move, it changed completely. Blood began running down the walls as the robin's egg blue of the room faded into a muddy mess of sticky wet wallpaper. Snakes appeared all over the floor and slithered in and out of the table and between our legs. Nate had jumped up on a waiting chair and was trying to pull his sneakers as far away from the reptiles as possible. The table that Violet was laying on morphed into a giant spider, covered in wiry black hair. She sat straight up, all three eyes open as her hair rippled around her in slow motion. Please make her stop," Nate yelped as a giant boa constrictor began winding itself around the leg of his chair. "Violet," I began, unsure of how to approach her. This woman definitely had some unresolved anger issues. "Violet." I lowered my voice a little and came around the side of the spider so she could better see me. "I haven't the slightest idea how any of this is happening, but could you possibly not? Nate is about to have a heart attack." I finally was in a position where I could see the whole of her face, but I didn't expect what I saw. Where emerald green eyes had once been, there was now milky white spheres, the iris behind the cataract indistinguishable under the cloudy lens. She was blind. That fog had taken her sight from her, but left her with an extra eye. "So much madness." Violet squished her eyes shut and balled her fists up at her side. The room began to shake again as the ground beneath the giant spider split open and the snakes coiled in fear as their lengthy bodies plummeted to the lava bubbling below. "Violet, enough! I don't know what you're doing or why, but this needs to stop." I hopped to the side as the chunk of floor I had been standing on fell away and hissed when it connected with the fire below. Nate's chair was teetering on the edge of the cavern. but Henri had managed to scramble up on a bookshelf. "Violet!" I raised my voice, hoping that it could snap her out of this hell she was creating. The walls had completely crumbled away now, and we were sitting bare on the streets of New Orleans with a burning volcano below us. "Adam, if you don't make her stop, someone else will," Henri yelled out over the roaring of the wind that had picked up around us like a cyclone. Someone had to be seeing this. The police would be here soon, and they would rather shoot the strange girl that was creating a firestorm in the middle of our neighborhood than try to talk her down from the ledge she was on. "Enough!" I roared, heated from her blatant disregard to my pleading with her. I tasted the sparks spewing from my mouth as new teeth split from my gums. I felt the forge burning deep within my belly as I lurched forward and snatched Violet off her spider. I kicked the arachnid into the fiery cavern, but not before it knocked Nate out of harm's way and into the darkened street. I reached out and shoved the bookshelf that Henri was perched atop, and it shattered against the blacktop, my brother skittering across the street as he hit the pavement. Violet ripped her arms from my grip and thrust them out as the foundation that was still standing peeled back to form a fortress around us. "We're all going to burn," she hissed, her pale lips curling back from her teeth. The third eye winked at me before a bright purple light erupted from it and slung me across pillars of swaying earth that were sunk deep into the molten pit. "Violet, listen to me. I don't know what's going on any more than you do, but you have to stop. You're drawing the wrong kind of attention. If people see this, the cops will come for you. They'll kill you." I pleaded with her as she stood on her toes atop a thin section of the floor. "They'd kill us anyway." Her voice echoed around me as she shot up in the air and came straight down on top of my shoulders. We teetered on the edge of the cavern before plummeting down towards the lava below. Violet Eve. We were free-falling. I pulled Adam down with me, just like they would pull all of us down eventually. I had no idea what I was anymore. I didn't feel the same in my skin. Though the weird thing was that it didn't feel wrong, necessarily. "Violet!" Adam's bellowing voice snapped me out of a headspace I didn't really care to occupy anymore. We were mere meters from the fire below, and all I could imagine was a net of indestructible material catching us like a circus trapeze act. The web made a strange sound, almost wet and sticky, as our bodies bounced off of it and we flailed back above the yawning cleave in the earth that I had so angrily conjured. I made all of this. I was causing this destruction, this chaos. If I started it, I could stop it. Before Adam and I could careen back into the volcano, I decided that I didn't want it to be there anymore. Right before we were to descend back through, the floor closed up beneath us, and we only had to fall a few feet before we hit solid ground. "Ugh!" Adam landed face down, his thick waves slung over the top of his head. I, unfortunately, landed on my arse. "Thank you." Adam turned himself over to face me and pushed himself up off the floor. At least I thought it was Adam. He sort of looked like Adam. The build was the same. The hair was the same. The voice was the same, but a lot about him was different. His face was masked with crimson scales, his serpentine eyes ringed with rows of the armored plates. Horns spiraled from the crown of his head and sparks of fire glinted when he opened his mouth to breathe. But the most alarming thing was his arms. They were charred and blackened like they had been run through a kiln, but the texture was broken by tiny streams of magma that coursed up and down his flesh. Even the tips of his fingers held a slight glow, like a freshly extinguished candle. What happened? I finally found the strength to speak. I could see Nate dragging himself across the street towards us. There were still no walls or roof to the Crescent City Shaman. We don't know. Adam carefully crawled across the floor to me as I saw Henri cautiously approach us from the corner of my eye. "Is it safe?" He stepped onto the floor of what used to be a room. I think so." Adam began to look me over like you would someone who had been in an accident. I'm fine." I wanted Adam away from me. I didn't want to be fawned over. Instantly, he was tugged backward across the floor on his bum as Henri stepped back. Nate had already set foot on the floor of the room, and I immediately wanted the shot back the way it was. It was as if nothing had happened. We were back in a rear room of the Crescent City Shaman with robin's egg blue walls and a little chair with the bookshelf in the corner. Am I really this drunk? Nate slunk down into the chair and pushed his hair back from his face. "You're not." Adam pulled himself up again, but kept his distance from me. "I just want to go home." This was not the place I wanted to be right now. You can't go home. Adam came a little closer, but still hadn't breached my bubble. Why the hell not? I was standing. I didn't even remember moving. Because your wonderful host is a lying, murdering demon? Henri responded, and I cast him a nasty glare. Try not to piss her off, okay? Adam cast a fevered look at his brother. You're telling me that Jeremy is a demon? I mean, a twat, yes, but a demon? I wasn't buying that. Granted, I didn't like the guy, but I hardly demonized him. Yes, we've seen this coming. Something has been in the works for a long time. I drew the devil card tonight, and now all of this. Henri tried to make me understand. He was right about this, as he put it. I had just done some pretty crazy stuff. Crazy wasn't the right word, but I didn't have anything better at the moment. And have you seen yourself? Adam asked me as he handed over a mirror from the tray on the side table. I hesitantly took it, lifted it to my face, and screamed so loud that the mirror shattered. I was purple. Not purple. A dusty lavender. Every bit of hair on my body was white, and a giant violet eye sat between my two regular ones. I soon noticed that my reflection had not been seen through my usual eyes. I'm blind, I uttered. I could see everyone in front of me, but in a weird hue and with tunnel vision. We noticed that when you first opened your eyes. Adam was so close to me I could smell the smoky fire that burned within him. So I'm seeing through this? I reached up to the eye and poked it. I jerked back in response as it teared up. I guess so. Can you actually see any of us? Adam asked. I could definitely see him, and not just physically. I could see a whole other being towering before me with great leathery wings and a long, scaly tail. Adam looked like a gigantic red dragon on 2 legs. I shook my head and let the eye readjust. I can see a lot of things. Everyone was normal now, but of course, Adam had some features that were physically permanent. We need to figure out how this happened and if we can reverse it. Adam had begun to think and was pacing back and forth in the tiny room. I don't think there is a cure, Adam. I think this is who you are now. Henri was serious. Who we are? What the hell were we then? Did the fog do this to us? I stood up, still wearing those ridiculous platform boots, and started to pace with Adam. Possibly. It never touched Nate or Henri, but everyone else that encountered it was affected somehow. Except Jeremy. Adam recalled what he had seen. Demon, Henri murmured. Missy. It dawned on me. Is Missy okay? I grabbed Adam and pulled him to me. I knew he had seen her. She was alive and with Jeremy last I saw her. Adam's amber-colored eyes mirrored the serpent back at me. And the others? I asked, fearing the answer. Dead. I'm assuming anyway. Adam took a deep breath and I could smell the sulfur from within. Why did it affect us like this, but kill all those other people? I couldn't comprehend it. Maybe it was meant for you? Nate shrugged in his corner. At least someone was making sense. Like, magically? Henri posed the question. I thought about it for a moment. The sensations that overtook me after that fog rolled in weren't magical, not in the sense that Henri was thinking. I thought I had been dying when in reality my body had been reconstructed at the molecular level. Or it at least had something to do with my genes. That's how it felt anyway. We mutated, I whispered. I thought back to my X-Men joke directed at Adam the day before. It wasn't as funny now. We're mutants? The corner of Adam's mouth turned up. Do you have a better explanation, Puff the Magic Dragon? I arched my brow and the third eye winked. What if it has to do with our birthdays? Adam caught my attention. The third eye was now seeing better, almost like my former vision, but keener. He had a good point. Both he and myself, as well as Missy, had a completely different reaction to whatever it was that had infected us. Maybe, but I don't know much about astrology. I shrugged. Someone had to know something. Well, all 3 of you were born on June 6th, 1986. A lot of 6s. Henri was trying to do the chart in his head. A lot of 6s. June 6th. 86. June 6th, 16. There was a pattern. 666. The demon accusations were starting to seem not so far-fetched. 6-6-16. I spoke to Adam. This is turning into some Illuminati bullshit. Nate couldn't handle the ridiculousness of the situation at this point. Let's not talk about it anymore tonight. We need to get some rest, and then we can try and hash it all out tomorrow. Fire licked at Adam's lips as he spoke. If I can't go home, where can I go? Missy is going to worry about me, and I tried to protest their decision to make me stay, away from Missy and Jeremy. I don't think she's concerned about anything, Violet. I watched her stand by while a crowd of people basically decomposed in front of her. She did nothing to help them, and she wasn't trying to find you either. Adam was blunt with me. Whatever this is, it's affecting who we are, our personalities. She just isn't herself. But I knew that she was forever changed. I might have had a lapse in judgment, but I didn't stand idly by as people died. People that I could have helped. We can talk about it tomorrow. Let's get to bed. Nate, you stay here tonight too. I don't want any of us leaving until we figure out what our next step is going to be. Adam took charge. He wasn't joking or making light of the situation, as I had known him to do. That's fine, I just want to sleep. Nate crept past Adam and crawled up on the massage table. That works for him. You two come with me upstairs. Henri directed me and Adam to follow. Nate looked cold, so I imagined him a big fuzzy blanket to keep him warm. He yelped when it wrapped itself around him and nervously smiled at me as I followed Henri and Adam to the top floor. Adam Bodine. The upstairs apartment wasn't that big. It had 2 bedrooms and a living room with attached kitchen. We were lucky there were even 2 bathrooms. You can take the couch, Adam, and let Violet have your bed. Henri tossed his house keys down on the dinette table and went to the fridge for something to drink. Sure. I sighed and started unfolding the scratchy blanket that was draped over the couch. How are you feeling, Violet? Henri poured 3 glasses of orange juice and handed one to her before passing me another. I'm okay. She was meek as she sipped on her juice. And you? Henri pointed his glass at me. I'm feeling rather good, actually. It wasn't a lie. I didn't feel the heat anymore. I didn't feel any pain either. If anything, I felt strong and agile. Unstoppable. Well, good. I'm going to attempt to sleep, if that is even possible, and I will see you 2 in the morning. Henri finished off his juice and slammed his cup on the table before marching into his bedroom and shutting the door behind him. My sheets are clean-ish. I flopped back on the couch and kicked off my boots. That's good to know. Violet stood in the middle of the living room, seemingly unsure. Make yourself at home. I laced my fingers behind my head and closed my eyes. I heard Violet kicking off her boots and then padding off to my bedroom. She returned rather quickly and stopped right behind the sofa. Can I borrow a shirt or something? I really want to get out of this dress. I peeked one eye open to see Violet leaning over me, that third eye staring me down. I knew she could tell that I was preoccupied by her new eye, and she ashamedly covered it and mumbled, Never mind. I'm just going to get some rest. She turned around quickly and hurried back to my bedroom with her hand over her forehead like she had a headache. You're a dick, Adam, you know that? I hadn't meant to stare, but maybe I could have been a bit less blatant. She just looked so different now with that extra eye and lilac skin. Her red hair was gone too, but other than that, she seemed to still be Violet. She might have been too self-conscious to look at me, but I wanted to fix that. Feeling guilty for my reaction, I got up from the sofa and knocked on my bedroom door. Violet, you still up? If you let me in, I'll get you something comfortable to sleep in. I cut my hands on the door as I spoke. It was quiet on the other side, not even a shift of movement. Maybe she had already fallen asleep, but I tried again anyway. Violet, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to stare. You just look so different now, and I was just getting used to that ginger hair. I laid my face on the door and waited for her to tell me to fuck off. Instead, she opened the door, and since I was leaning on it, I fell sidelong into the bedroom. I was looking up at her again, but this time I didn't notice the third eye because it was closed. Miss me? I smirked, sitting myself up. I just really don't want to sleep in this dress. She stepped back and perched herself on the end of the bed. I will take that as a solid no then. She turned her head away from me to look out the window as I went to a box on the opposite end of the room and began rummaging through it. Did you just move in? Violet asked me a question. Hadn't expected that. Yeah, a few days ago. Haven't really had the time to unpack. I singed each piece of clothing I picked up, leaving behind sooty fingerprints. Had to move back home? Now Violet was just being shady. I didn't have to. I chose to. The place I was living at wasn't exactly safe, and I had some things going on, so this seemed like the best option. I gave up trying to touch anything. You need help? Violet was standing next to me. Her bare feet had padded silently across the wooden floors, and I hadn't even heard her move. I'm burning everything. I threw my hands up in defeat. That's what the gloves were for. Violet got down on her hands and knees and began filing through the box for me. Yeah, Henri made them out of heat-resistant material and some sort of magical spell or something. Apparently whatever happened increased the heat inside of me. The gloves just melted off my hands. I sat back as Violet pulled out a black shirt with the words "Blood of the Fallen" badly screen-printed on the front of it. I was in a metal band. I sheepishly replied as she read the front of the shirt. Violet smirked and took the shirt into the bathroom. It's soft. I heard her comment before the door opened and she was standing there looking like some anime character in nothing but my old band shirt. That's why I've kept it for so long. It's one of my favorites. I scooted back as she walked over to the bed and flopped on top of it face first. I scrambled up from my view on the floor and made it to the door before I heard Violet's muffled voice. I can sleep on the couch. She rolled off the bed and slid over to the door. No. Take the bed. You had a rough time tonight. I tapped the door frame, scorching the wood, and tried to slip away, but she reached out and placed her hand over mine. Seriously, I can take the couch. No reason for me to steal the bed. I blinked, and I was in the bedroom with the door shut in my face. I tried to process what just happened. She touched my hand and didn't burn, and then I was on the other side of where I was trying to be. Violet! I hollered and went back to open the door when I heard the lock click. Good night, Adam. Violet's voice was distant as I heard her flop onto the couch in the same way she had done on my bed. She wasn't going to let me out, at least not until morning. Violet seemed to have a better grasp on this new life than I did. Maybe I should have heated the doorknob up from the inside when she tried to lock it, but my flame didn't seem to affect her. I crawled into my new bed feeling like a total jerk, even if it wasn't self-imposed. I couldn't tell if I was tired or not, but sleep seemed to be my only option at this point. Violet could be dealt with in the morning. Violet Eve. The smell of bacon sizzling in a cast-iron skillet roused me from a fitful sleep. Dreams had been on an endless loop the whole time I lay wrapped up on the couch in the itchiest blanket I had ever had the displeasure of touching. I hoped that it had all been a dream, but when I opened my eyes, I saw nothing. It wasn't until I let the third eye open that I could see anything. Fuck this. He made you sleep on the couch? Henri was standing over me with a fork in his hand. No, I chose to sleep out here. I wrapped myself in the rough blanket and got up from the couch. I wished the thing was at least made of fleece. And then it was. Why hadn't I thought about doing that last night? Well, aren't you the gentleman? Henri went back to flipping the bacon as he checked on the bread in the oven. I pride myself on chivalry. I took my purple self over to the dinette table and sat down. You feel all right? Henri poured raw scrambled eggs over the hot bacon grease and waited for it to bubble. I'm fine. Blind, but fine. I sighed, wanting a hot cuppa right about now. And then I had one, complete with cream and sugar. What the hell? How was I even able to do these things? I see you made yourself some tea. Henri came over to the table and set down a tray of bread. Here, have a biscuit. He seemed entirely nonplussed by my random mug of liquid warmth. That's not a biscuit. I picked up the bread and it flaked apart in my hands. It smelled good, though. Buttery. It is here. I'm getting ready to make the gravy to go with it and sausage for the fire giant in there. Henri began to make a roux in the skillet with butter and flour. I broke the biscuit open entirely and began slathering it in the butter and preserves that were already on the table. My mouth was watering. I hadn't eaten anything since the beignets yesterday morning. Adam's bedroom door creaked open and he appeared in the doorway, his hands shoved deep inside a pair of oven mitts. He was in nothing but a pair of flannel trousers, his chest completely exposed. It wasn't blackened like his arms, but it was covered in tattoos with fiery veins that crept up and spread over his torso. His abdominal region had felt the effects of the fog, however. It almost glowed as if he was lit from within by a blazing hot core. "Morning, Adam! Sausage gravy and biscuits with eggs will be ready in just a minute." Henri hollered from the kitchen as he stirred the gravy in the pan and tossed in the already crumbled sausage. "It smells amazing." Adam groggily sat down next to me and took 2 biscuits off the tray and placed them on his plate. His long undercut that had been pulled back the night before was now flipped to one side and hung in his face. "I can feel you boring a hole in me with that eye." Adam was dressing his biscuits and didn't even bother to look at me. "I'm sorry." I flushed and averted my eyes to my plate. What a fucking grump. "You should have waited and put gravy on those." He pointed at the jam-smeared bread on my plate. "I've never eaten something like this before. Biscuits are something else entirely where I come from." I picked up the biscuit and took a bite. So fluffy. "Well, eat the next one with the sausage gravy," Adam suggested. In the daylight, I could see just how dragon-like his eyes were. He looked just as strange as I did. "And we have the gravy, bacon, sausage, and eggs. I'm sure if you ask nicely, Violet will conjure you a cup of coffee." Henri winked at me. Adam glanced over at my mug of tea as I pulled it close to me like it was the most precious thing I owned. "Coffee would be nice." Adam turned to me and I blinked. "Coffee? Nope. I wasn't going to do tricks for them." "Then go make a pot." My response was snide. Henri caught the tone in my voice and turned with a carafe of juice in his hand. "Did I say something wrong?" Adam cocked his head to the side, his hair tangling in his horns. "I don't do tricks." My confident sentence came out rather meek. "I wasn't trying to make you feel like a circus animal, Violet. I was just impressed that you can poof whatever you want into existence." Henri came back and sat across from me at the table. "I don't consciously do it. Not entirely." I glanced at Adam. Locking him in his room was intentional, however. "You need to figure out how to control it, just like Adam needs to control that fire." "What in the hell are you doing?" Henri was watching Adam shovel food into his mouth with his hands. "I can't hold the fork. It melts. This is just quicker." Adam pointed at the fork that was lying on the table in 2 smelted pieces. "Control that fire!" Henri went back to eating his breakfast. "So, what are we doing?" I hadn't even touched my biscuit save for the 1 bite and hadn't helped myself to the rest of the breakfast either. I was too busy ruminating over what happened the night before. Eating breakfast, I thought." Adam threw up a scaled brow as he bit into an almost black piece of bacon. I mean with this." I pointed to the large indigo eye on my forehead. "We will get to that after breakfast. Eat, then we're going to visit some friends of mine." Henri kept on eating calmly. Calm. That was something he was very good at. I couldn't argue. I had no idea what I was doing. Henri seemed like he had it all under control, so I was going to let him handle it. I didn't have much of an option on clothes after I got done with my shower. Adam had told me to have at whatever was in the boxes sealed with blue tape, but he and I were hardly a similar size. I opened up my 3rd blue-taped box to find several articles of women's clothing in a similar size to mine. Adam sure had interesting taste. That would be my ex's stuff. Adam was standing in the doorway. I pulled my towel tighter around me as my hand dangled in the open box. "Why did you keep it?" I thought it was sort of strange to keep things like clothing and other personal items from past relationships, at least ones that you didn't plan on revisiting. "Well, I was actually planning on donating the stuff in the blue tape boxes, but I didn't get a chance to before I moved. I found that stuff in a duffel bag in the back of my closet." Adam looked like he wanted to come in, but he didn't want to make me feel uncomfortable. The clothes smelled clean, so I picked out some torn black leggings and a plain black shirt with a Baphomet on the front. "She was a Satanist," Adam shrugged. We were a mess. I thought about being dressed in the clothing, and then I was. This could really come in handy. "I'm going to have to go barefoot." I looked down at my purple toes. "Or you could just poof you some shoes." Adam now sat on his bed. I could do that. I would do that. The comfiest, foot-cradling, furry... Adam started laughing. My feet were wrapped in what looked like giant fuzzy squirrels, not what I had in mind. You could have just conjured yourself an entirely new outfit. Adam was smiling at me. That might not go any better than these. I wiggled my toes inside the fuzzy booties. It wasn't exactly what I had imagined. Never know until you try. Adam lounged back on his bed and closed his eyes. He was right, but I didn't think now was the time to start practicing. I thought about my bare feet and looked down to see my toes again. Screw the shoes. I'm just going to go barefoot, like I said. I didn't feel like trying to figure out all of this, whatever the hell it was. My anxiety was rearing its ugly head and making my chest feel tight. Barefoot in New Orleans. You've had your tetanus shot, right? Adam responded sarcastically as he hopped off the bed. I stopped abruptly in the doorway and turned to speak. If the million tiny nuclear bombs that went off inside me last night didn't hurt me, I doubt a rusty nail will. Adam Bodine. Who are we going to see? I threw the hood of my jacket up over my head and slipped on a pair of aviator sunglasses. Jackie, Cassandra, Josiah, the usual. They saw this coming just as much as I did and can maybe find us a solution. Henri snuck me out to his truck before going back to get Violet. He had wrapped her snowy hair in a scarf and pulled it low over her third eye. She wouldn't be able to see, but we would guide her. I had given her some sunglasses and she tried to powder herself with the makeup she had, but it was really difficult to hide the hue of her skin. I watched as Henri guided Violet to the car, her shoulders tight as she nervously let him lead her like some guide dog. Comfortable? I asked as she slid into the bench seat of the truck. Sure. Violet was short as she fixed the wrap on her head. I just nodded. She didn't want to talk to me. She didn't really want to talk to anyone at the moment. She'd been mostly silent for at least an hour. The drive to Jackie's wasn't very long. We could have walked, but with our new makeovers, that would have been detrimental. We aren't staying long, just picking up Jackie and then going to Cassandra's. Henri idled the car in front of an old antebellum in the middle of the city. Jackie rushed out of the house and down the front stairs before hopping in the front seat next to Henri. Now, what is this important thing you wanted to talk to me about? Jackie adjusted himself in the seat as he spoke to my brother. He didn't even bother to say hello to me or Violet. They're sitting behind you. Henri jerked his thumb behind him. Jackie turned to see me practically looking like the Unabomber, and Violet huddled in the corner with her hands covering her face. You want to talk to me about Adam and his poor fashion choices? Jackie was scrutinizing my disguise. The sick part of me was laughing inside as I ripped my hood down and tore off the sunglasses. Boo! I boomed, trying not to laugh. The sound that Jackie made even elicited a giggle from Violet as he leapt onto Henri and accidentally laid on the horn. Damn it, Jackie, get off me! Henri shoved him over to his seat and ceased the horn honking. What on God's green earth happened to him? Jackie's eyes were practically bulging from their sockets. They're what I wanted to talk to you about, Henri responded, taking the car out of park. Who is that? Jackie tried to sneak a better look at Violet, but she turned her head away. Remember the leprechaun? I asked, putting my hood back up. She look like you? Jackie didn't seem at all surprised that Violet was the one sitting next to me. If you mean different, then yes. I didn't want to disclose Violet's new physique without her permission. What in the world? Jackie finally turned himself to face forward and put his seatbelt on. He was just shaking his head and clicking his tongue as he took it all in. I wondered if the rest of Henri's little group would have similar reactions. I had never been to Cassandra's before. Henri wouldn't take me because their meetings were supposed to be secret and I wasn't part of the inner sanctum, or whatever that meant. Cassandra's house was enormous, an old plantation mansion with a winding drive through moss-covered oaks and an expansive field behind it. I wished that we had something that nice and wondered what the inside looked like. Adam helped Violet out of the car while Jackie and I go talk to Cassandra. Henri parked the car next to a red Miata and hopped out of the front seat. She doesn't know we're coming, does she? I knew that he had made plans without checking in with all parties involved. He wasn't as confident about the situation as I thought. No, none of them do. We were supposed to have an emergency meeting today anyway. I just didn't tell them that I was bringing guests. Henri spoke through my open window as Jackie jogged around the car and up the front steps. He rapped on the door and patiently waited until a thin woman answered. Henri held his finger up for me to wait before scrambling up the stairs to talk to her. I could see the woman peering around Jackie's shoulder to look at me through the window. I made sure to keep my sunglasses on just in case. There was no arguing, though. No yelling or disagreeing tones. Mambo Cassandra was eerily calm. She brushed past Jackie and came down the stairs, her white dress billowing behind her as she came right up to my open window. "Take her out of the car and bring her inside. The others are going to want to see this." Cassandra reached out a slender finger and pushed my sunglasses down my nose. She didn't flinch when she saw my face. Instead, she opened the door for me to get out. I reached my hand back for Violet's, but she pushed it away. "They want us to come inside," I whispered to her, feeling Cassandra's eyes on me as she waited patiently by the door. "I don't want to go anywhere." Violet scrunched herself up in the eaves of the car door and kept her face flat against the window. "Violet, Henri is going out on a limb for us here. Let's just go inside." I didn't want to make my brother look bad, but she wasn't budging. "No, I don't want to be gawked at or do tricks. I don't want to tell the whole world that I'm some monster. You go in. I'll be fine right here." Violet's voice came out low as she pulled the hood up on her jacket she had taken from Henri. "Vi, let her be, Adam. If she isn't ready to face what she's become and embrace it, then she isn't ready." Cassandra held her hand out for me to step from the car. "You don't want to do that." I held up my fists of fire before taking myself out of the car and leaving Violet behind to drown in her own misery. "Right this way. Josiah and the others are already seated." Cassandra opened one of two large doors into a darkened dining hall with a low fire lit in the fireplace. I recognized Josiah with his thick curly beard and one gold tooth, and I recognized Medusa sitting next to him. Another two men were seated on the opposite side of the table, but I'd never seen them before. Henri, take a seat." Josiah ushered down at the chair next to him, and my brother sat down. "Take a seat too, Adam." Josiah tapped on the table, and I settled down in the chair on the end, as Cassandra took her seat next to him. Jackie had come around and sat nearest his cousin. "Now, why have you brought Adam to one of our meetings?" Josiah's disposition immediately changed as he turned on Henri. His voice was kept low, but my brother looked rather scared nonetheless. There is a perfectly good explanation for that." Henri started to assure him there was a good reason we were here, when Cassandra chimed in. "Adam is afflicted with something. Henri figured that we could help." Cassandra leaned over the table towards Josiah, a look of anticipation on her face. Josiah turned his attention to me and kicked back in his seat. "Go on then, child. What ails you?" I took a deep breath. I knew these people were used to experiencing weird shit, but this was beyond weird. The sunglasses came off first, and then the jacket. I wanted them to have the full effect. Josiah's eyes widened, but he didn't panic like Nate had. We had to make him stay behind because of how poorly he reacted, but the Hungan stayed calm. "How did this happen?" He turned back to my brother as if he deliberately allowed such a thing. "Fog." I had a one-word response for them. "Fog? Fog turned you into a dragon." Josiah was skeptical. "Maybe not turned us, but it activated something. I'm not the only one either." I tried to clarify myself. Josiah looked to Cassandra this time for answers. "There's a woman in the car. I didn't get to fully take a look at her, but she's similar to whatever I am. Henri thinks that maybe you can help us." I figured I would take the attention off of Henri and let Josiah focus completely on me. "I can do a few things. When did all of this happen?" Josiah got up from his seat and came closer to me. "At about midnight last night," I responded, putting my sunglasses back on. Josiah stepped away immediately and began shooing at me with his hands. "Out! Out! I need to confer with everyone. Go wait out in the parlor." Josiah tried to excuse me from my seat, but I held fast. "No. Whatever light bulb that just went off in your head, you're going to share it with all of us." Fire sparked from my mouth. Josiah looked slightly alarmed as he nodded and sat back down to speak. "We all have sensed a great upheaval coming, something that could change the face of humanity as we know it. We have done countless divinations and rituals to try and discern what was coming, but to no avail." Josiah poured himself a glass of bourbon as he spoke. "We aren't the only ones that have felt this, however. We have been in communication with other groups of our nature, Wiccans, traditional witches, heathens, shamans, Buddhists, even New Age practitioners. All of them were getting similar signs and dreams to what we experienced." Cassandra took over the conversation as she eyed me from across the table. "They may have said a lot, but they gave me little to no information. Well, what the hell is it? What have you seen? I needed more than what they were giving me. The end of the world. Cassandra locked eyes with me. What Cassandra means to say is that we're in a period of human decline. It's time for us to be wiped out so the Earth can start with a clean slate. One of the men I didn't recognize elaborated. So, you're seeing the end times? Like in the Bible, this whole 6616 thing? I had suggested our birthdays as a valid answer to the night before, and we had started to discuss the whole demon thing, but now that outsiders were suggesting the same, I wasn't so keen on my theory. Maybe there is something to it biblically speaking. The Bible may not be full truth, but a lot of things are lost in translation over time. The only one man that hadn't spoken now responded to my question. Okay, so you have seen glimpses of the end of the world, but that doesn't explain us. I kept using the plural for Violet, since she wasn't in the room. She was part of this too. That, sadly, is something we haven't seen. It's news to us too. Josiah didn't have an answer to my question. I may have a solution for that. Henri finally spoke up. And what might that be? Josiah didn't seem to trust Henri's abilities. The Destiny Diviner. My brother looked at me and nodded his head. That was an option, if it really worked. I still didn't know what it was that Violet had seen. That thing doesn't work, Henri. You tested it before and it fell flat. Medusa finally spoke up after being silent this whole time. Don't try to make me look bad, Tasha. Ooh, Henri had used her real name. I tweaked it a bit and finally got it working right. Magic is full of trial and error. He wasn't taking any of her shit. Bring it to us then. We can wait. Josiah still didn't believe. Henri got up and beckoned for me to follow when the Hungan cut in. No, you leave your brother and the girl in the car here. We can't have them roaming around the city right now. I'm not leaving him behind. Let's go, Adam. Henri pushed me. I went to get up when Josiah slammed his hands down on the table. If you want us to help him, Henri, then you must leave him here. That is the only way we will assist you. You know that Adam can't go walking around in the city looking the way he does. He will attract the wrong kind of attention for our community. The Hungan was sincere as he shot daggers at my brother. Henri turned to me. I knew he didn't want to leave, but he would have to if we were to fix this. And Violet would have to get her ass out of the car. I'll stay. It's not a big deal. I sat back down and crossed my arms over my chest. I can send Leo out to the car to fetch the girl. Josiah nodded at the unfamiliar man dressed in a deep purple suit. But Leo didn't have to get up. The double doors crashed open and there stood Violet, blood oozing down her face and her hands torn from palm to fingers. Violet Eve. I was being a brat. That I knew. I should have just gone inside and talked to these people, but I didn't want to be gawked at. I wasn't exactly a confident person, and my self-esteem had always been pretty low. At this point, it had hit rock bottom. I used to stand out as it was with the wild red hair and pinched pink complexion, but now I was a three-eyed purple monster with the ability to change and create things by sheer will alone. The day was gray, but it suited my mood at least. The car had become stuffy, so I decided to get some fresh air and maybe wander around for a bit. I hadn't really gotten to see the city and its outlying areas yet. There was a weird chill in the air for the 6th of June, but I chalked it up to the storm that was so clearly moving in. The land that the house stood on was vast with its giant oaks and curtains of moss. The field was lush and green. I knew that it had to feel wonderful on my bare feet. And it did. A simple comfort in a very uncomfortable day. I knew the rain was coming. The bellies of the clouds were bulging, ready to split open and dump a torrential downpour upon us. The birds still chirped loudly despite the gray sky, like they didn't care at all if it rained. I didn't care either. Maybe the rain would wash away the film of purple that clung to my skin. Highly unlikely, though. The rain started small, little taps of moisture here and there as I made my way around the side of the house. I could smell the earth being dampened by the quickening shower, and I just stopped in the middle of the field and threw my head back, all eyes closed. As the rain fell in fat droplets on my face, the air around me changed. The smell of wet grass and moist dirt had morphed into the aroma of flowers. Roses, lilies, lavender. There were no flowers in this field, not that I had seen anyway. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I had made the smell. I still wasn't sure how all of this worked. But then the birds ceased their talking abruptly, as if someone just paused the scenery. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of rain as it smacked the roof of the house. I wasn't even feeling it on my skin anymore. I slowly opened my eyes, wondering if I had somehow done this. I had no control over my emotions at the moment and felt that what little there was had left me forever. Droplets of water hung in the air like crystals, frozen in place as if time had stopped. The clouds were still dark and rain poured from above, but it never seemed to touch the ground. Before I had a chance to question myself again, the clouds above me parted and the brightest white light beamed down upon me. If I hadn't already been blind, I would have surely been now. Even my third eye had squeezed itself closed, but I could still see. The light was falling. I could sense the shadows moving in front of my eyelids as something landed in front of me, and the ground shook so hard that I toppled over. I went into fight or flight mode, but I chose flight first. I scrambled to my feet and tested if my eye could see. It could, but what I saw had me gobsmacked. A man, or at least I think it was a man, stood before me in nothing but white leather trousers. His fashion choice would have been comical had he not towered over me menacingly like some Anglo giant with his golden locks and powder blue eyes. He was silent as he lifted his arms high in the air, fingers curled into a fist. Whoa, whoa, whoa! I panicked, throwing my arms up to shield myself. Shield schmield. It was more like I ejected him across the backyard instead of defending myself from his blow. Holy crap. If I hadn't been bracing myself already, it probably would have thrown me back a good couple of meters, too. Run. I had to run. I wasn't sure if I had killed Leather Trouser Man, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. I picked my little legs up as high as they would go and bounded through the long grasses back to the front of the house. He wasn't dead. Not at all. There was no making it to the front porch. He caught me in the side yard and slung me like a discus into the front drive. Screeching metal crunched around me as I hammered into the side of Henri's truck. Surprisingly, it didn't break my back. I pulled myself up as Leather Trousers came storming into the drive like he was on some sort of mission. I wasn't really a fighter. I was a thinker, a writer. My imagination would be my best weapon, but I had to focus it on something. Stop, or I'll smite you, he bellowed, throwing out his hand. I don't think so, Leather Trousers. I could have been imagining him for all I knew. I wasn't going to let my own mind defeat me if that were the case. A wall is what I imagined. No, 4 walls, as they wrapped around me and kept the man from smiting me, as he put it. But he blew through the stone facade and sent me up and over the truck. Someone would hopefully hear the hell I was going through and come out to save me, but until then I had to fight. I did some pretty crazy things the night before, things that almost got several people killed. I may not have been in my right mind at that point, but I knew what I felt and why those elements manifested themselves. So I made the ground melt into quicksand, the goopy mess sucking at the legs of the massive golden-haired man. He struggled to pull his feet free while I circled around the mire and tried to back my way to the house. It didn't hold long because apparently he had the ability to heat the wet sand around him so hot that it turned to glass and he shattered his way out of the pit. The man was on me before I knew it and had taken me down to the ground. Don't struggle. You have to come with me. I have to free you, he whispered in my ear as he covered my mouth with his alabaster hand. I kicked. Hard. Straight in his chiseled gut, I planted my bare foot. Over and over, I kicked as I struggled to breathe under his grip. My eyes were scrunched closed as I focused on fighting when I remembered how handy my third eye was. He had shoved my face down in the dirt and pulled my arms behind my back when I felt a searing pain in the palms of my hands. Ah! I screamed as the burning ripped through my palms and all the way to my fingertips. That was it. I wasn't going to let this madman take me anywhere. I twisted myself just enough to open my third eye and blast Leather Trousers straight in his pretty little face. He let go of my arms as a screeching growl erupted from his mouth and he stumbled back towards Henri's truck. I shoved my hands into the dusty drive to stop them from bleeding as the giant man straightened himself up and came back for more. The skin of his face hung past his chin, peeled from the glittering bone by my blast. You're far feistier than we anticipated. He began to charge towards me, but I wanted him to explode instead. It was like a flashbang went off. The vision in front of me brightened like it had when the man had ascended from the clouds, and the concussive sound made my ears ring. The sonic boom from the burst thrust me back onto the front steps. And then the sky began to rain again. but this time with visceral chunks of pale flesh and a spray of blood. Leather trousers was no more, and I was left with a busted forehead and skinned palms. He tried to kill me, and I survived on sheer imagination alone. I wanted to go inside now. I couldn't be out here alone anymore, lest something else came to free me. Adam Bodine. Violet's eyes were wide, their milky color bold against her lilac flesh. She stumbled into the room and Henri had to catch her as her legs gave way. Everyone quickly surrounded her as Henri tried to keep her conscious. "Violet, come on, stay awake." He tapped her cheek as her blinded eyes began to roll into the back of her head. "Violet, listen to the sound of my voice, sugar. Steady your breath, focus on your breathing, and let yourself feel it." Cassandra coached her as Violet went rigid in my brother's arms. Even though she was wrapped up in Henri's huge jacket, I could see her chest steadily rising and falling as she slowed her breathing and relaxed the muscles in her body. "That's good, sugar. Keep breathing and give yourself a minute to get it together." Cassandra was now kneeling next to Violet's head as she spoke. I had gotten down on all fours to better see her as she rolled away from Henri and to Cassandra. Violet slowly let herself come upright as she focused on her breathing. Eventually, all three eyes fluttered open, and I watched as silent tears streamed from the corners of her eyes. "What happened, Violet?" Josiah replaced Henri and immediately began asking her questions. Her snowy-haired head snapped to him, the one violet eye beaming as she glared. "Do I know you?" she almost hissed, turning around completely to face him. "Hungan Josiah." He introduced himself, but Violet looked indifferent. "I was attacked in your backyard." Violet lifted her hand to her face where the scalp was split and blood had coagulated at the bridge of her nose. "By who?" Cassandra looked alarmed. "More like what?" "I have no idea what he was, but he came down from the clouds and said that he had to free me. I wasn't going to let that happen." Violet looked like she was starting to realize just how many sets of eyes were on her. "Where is he now?" Leo asked, assessing the damage done to Violet's body. "All over the front drive." Her expression was deadpan. "Oh." Leo looked a tad alarmed as he stepped back from her. "You killed him?" Josiah needed her to clarify. "More or less." Violet was clearly uncomfortable with the situation now that she wasn't in the throes of a panic attack. Josiah whispered to Leo and the other man, who I found out was Franklin, for the simple fact that Josiah couldn't whisper to save his life. "Why don't you go with Cassandra and Medusa to get cleaned up while the rest of us handle this situation?" Josiah suggested to Violet, who was still looking at him like he was her next meal. Cassandra gently steered her towards the door, subtly glancing back at me. "All of us, out to the front of the house." Josiah demanded that we all go and investigate Violet's claims. I wasn't going to question him. Things were getting too weird. "My truck!" Henri squawked as we stepped out onto the front porch. His truck indeed. The roof had a huge dent in it, and the back of the cab on the driver's side was completely caved in, as if something had been flung into the side of it. "What the fuck happened?" I breathed, noticing what appeared to be a giant grease stain in the middle of the drive. Upon closer inspection, we realized that it wasn't someone's oil leaking, it was blood splatter. She really did a number on whatever that was. I was kind of proud of her, not that I wanted any of us to have to kill, but when it came down to it, Violet chose survival over letting herself be defeated. She may have been disgusted by the way she looked now, but she still chose to live, despite our little transformation. "This is quite the mess." Josiah circled the stain before kneeling down to dip his fingers in it. He rubbed the viscous liquid across his fingertips and gave it a good sniff. "It smells like rose water." He held his fingers out for Leo and Jackie to smell. "Exactly like rose water. But what is it?" Jackie responded, squatting down next to the stain. "It looks like some sort of blood." I pointed out the obvious. Violet did say she left him all over the front drive. "Hand me an empty vial, Henri. I know you have one." Josiah waited while Henri fished around in his pocket and produced a small corked vial. Josiah took it from him and swept some of the liquid inside before stopping it up and passing it over to Leo. Franklin had wandered off towards the truck and was running his hands all along the dented metal. "The girl did this." He tapped on the largest dent, the one that looked like it had been made during an avalanche. "How on earth did Violet make a dent like that?" I couldn't even make a dent like that. I gestured at the pickup. There was no way that that tiny woman made such a bad depression in the metal. It was her. I can feel it. Whatever it was, flung her from the side yard over there, and she collided with the truck. She then tried to stop him from hurting her further by conjuring 4 stone walls, which he barreled through, sending her up and over the truck. Franklin was seeing everything as if it were happening in front of him. She then turned the ground into a bog? Quicksand, possibly. Either way, she trapped him, but he broke free and tried to... Franklin held his head in his hands and tried to discern what had happened. He was now on the far side of the stain, near the stairs. He had everyone's attention now. He was burning the skin off of her hands. I don't know why. Then she blasted him in the face with that third eye of hers. He survived, but before he could come back for more, he exploded. Franklin had finished his vision. Like, literally exploded? I was baffled. How in the hell had she managed that? Yes, from what I can gather, she just looked at him and kaboom. Franklin had no other way to explain it. I can take this blood, or whatever it is, and have it analyzed. We can also use some of it to divine later. Leo pocketed the vial. Sounds good to me. Henri, hose the drive off. We can't have this sticky mess being tracked into Cassandra's house. Josiah snapped his fingers as he, Leo, Jackie, and Franklin made their way back inside. Why do you let them treat you like that? I crossed over to my brother, who was still staring down at the pooling blood. I'm still learning. He's my teacher. I do as he tells me. Henri didn't make eye contact with me, but instead went to go get the hose. I couldn't talk any sense into him. He aspired to be a magician in any sense of the word. I didn't like the way they treated him, save for maybe Cassandra. She had at least been kind enough to take care of Violet. Violet Eve. This may sting a bit. Cassandra applied an ointment to my palms and I winced. She wasn't lying. I was sitting in a lavishly furnished bedroom atop an enormous bed with Cassandra tending to my wounds, while Medusa went off to find me something less dirty to wear. What was he trying to do here? Looks like burns. Cassandra ran a delicate finger along the side of my hand. I don't know. I think he was going to kill me, I whispered, my head hanging low so my hair covered my face. But he didn't. Cassandra clucked, wrapping my hands with soft gauze. Cassandra's wardrobe is useless, but I did find this linen dress. Medusa entered the room with a white cotton dress on a hanger. It wasn't really my style, but I didn't have many options. I could have conjured one, but I wasn't in the mood to think. I took the dress and silently thanked her as I slipped off my leggings and shirt before throwing the garment over my head. It suits you with that pretty purple skin. I kind of missed the red hair, though. Medusa had recognized me the second I burst through those doors. It is rather nice on you. Don't hide your face so much, not with beautiful eyes like that. Cassandra ran her finger under my chin and tilted my face up towards her. My eyes weren't exactly beautiful. 2 of them were dead, and the third was freakish at best. What do you think it was that came after you? Medusa was folding up my dirty clothes as she spoke. Your guess is as good as mine. He kept saying weird things like smite and that he had to free me. Sounds oddly religious, don't you think? I slipped off the edge of the bed and ambled over to the window. I could see Adam and Henri talking as they hosed the drive of the remaining remnants of leather trousers. Maybe there is something to this 666 thing, Cassandra spoke, turning her attention to me. Are you telling me I'm the Antichrist? I tried not to scoff at her. No, but maybe you are related to it somehow. You and Adam both. We will get to the bottom of this. Cassandra came to pat my shoulder before beckoning me to follow her and Medusa back downstairs. Now that all of that is over, we can get back to this Destiny Diviner stuff. I could hear Josiah speaking as the 3 of us entered the room. I knew I didn't look normal, but I didn't expect the looks I got when I sat down at the table next to Cassandra. Henri had one brow up as he watched me from across the table, and Adam had followed me with his eyes ever since I graced everyone with my presence. Jackie even gave me a weird wink. I was just saying that it was safe for Henri to go fetch this divinity thingy, and we could keep an eye on Adam and Violet till he returns. Josiah reiterated what he had previously been saying. I still don't like that idea. Henri was vocal about it. I hadn't known anything about this until now, since I had been in the car for that conversation. I don't care, that's the deal. Even though these two may have been good people before, she just killed a man, and we have to be sure that she isn't dangerous. Adam, too. Josiah pointed his finger at me. I felt my third eye start to heat up as I shot daggers in Josiah's direction. It's not like I just went around murdering people. He tried to kill me first. Cassandra laid her hand over mine as she spoke. Let's not go tossing around accusations, Josiah. I think the girl was merely defending herself. At least she was on my side. I saw it, Josiah. He attacked her first, and she defended herself. Even the man, who I found out was named Franklin, was Team Violet. Either way, they stay here while you get the diviner. I want to speak with them more anyway. Josiah was flippant. Henri looked to Adam, who nodded after giving it some thought, and then directed his attention to me. Whatever is necessary. My voice fell flat, but I really didn't care. Good. Leo can accompany you while he drops off the sample we took outside. Hurry now. We don't have much time to figure this out. Josiah nodded and Henri stood with Leo before departing from the room. Now, why don't you take Violet and go relax in the sunroom? We have some things we need to discuss on our end first. Josiah spoke directly to Adam like I wasn't even in the room. Gladly. I didn't want to be around a man who was so full of himself that he sucked all the air from the room when he spoke. I took the long way around the table and made sure to wish that Josiah's arse was glued to his seat. Pity I wouldn't be in the room when he tried to stand up. I'd pay to see that show. Are you okay? It was the first thing Adam had the chance to say to me since I decided to stay in the car. As good as I can be. I settled down on a wicker love seat and drew my bare feet up under my dress. They got you all cleaned up. Adam settled down on the love seat next to me. He was awfully close, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Yeah, Cassandra cleaned me up and Medusa found me this dress. Not exactly my style, but beggars can't be choosers. I fiddled with the lacy neckline as I spoke. It looks nice with your skin. He complimented me. It was actually kind of sweet considering I thought I looked like a turnip in a flour sack. Thanks, I chuckled, tucking my snowy hair behind my ear. So, what are they expecting to find with the Destiny Diviner? Josiah had mentioned Henri's invention, but not exactly what they were using it for. Henri thinks we can use it to give us some insight into what we are. Adam rubbed at the scales on his face as he spoke. Time stopped for a minute. I had already held the blasted thing, and the things I saw were comparable to what was happening with us at the moment. What would transpire if I held it now? What would I see, or not want to see, for that matter? Adam, time sped back up and I found the words to speak. I never told you what I saw when I held it. He turned to face me suddenly. No, you never did. You took off like a bat out of hell and made me chase you 6 blocks. You didn't see what I saw, though. I saw the end of the world. Famine, pestilence, war, death. So much violence and sheer hatred. Then there were these children, babies that grew up with normal lives, but then they became monsters. I took a deep breath as I really thought about what I was saying. Are we those monsters? Violet. Adam looked like what I said hurt him deeply. You're not a monster. We're not monsters. Whatever you saw, there has to be an explanation. I know he was trying to make me feel better, but I still felt like a cyclops nonetheless. Maybe not, but I don't want to hold that thing again. I refused. There was no way I wanted a repeat of the terror I had seen before. Maybe they won't make you, Adam responded, lounging back as he diverted his attention to nothingness. Make me? I'm sorry, but no one is going to make me do anything. They have no claim on me. I was rather offended that he would suggest such a thing. They don't play around, Violet. They will make you if they want to make you. I may not actively practice, but I know their magic is strong. You may be a skeptic, but trust me on this one. Adam was severe when he finally looked back at me. You want me to run away, don't you? I cocked a brow at him. I'm not afraid of them. I have no reason to be. Josiah will understand why when he goes to stand up from his chair. I smirked at Adam and watched the expression on his face change. So what if I was being petty? Josiah had called me a murderer and treated me as if I were something inherently dangerous. If that stain on the front gravel is any indication, I definitely see why you weren't afraid. But what do you think he was? Adam was just full of curiosity. Maybe one of us. I'm not sure. He was hell-bent on taking me out, though. I tried to forget the savagery in his pale blue eyes right before I made him combust. We shall see when Henri gets back. I think that Diviner will give us the answers we need. Adam closed his eyes as he nodded his head. I don't think he quite believed himself. I hope so. I keep praying that I won't be purple forever, that this third eye will eventually fade away and disappear altogether. But I'm blind now. I think my hair went white because of the trauma, and this color doesn't scrub off. I tried. I covered up rough bits of skin on my forearms where I tried to scratch and scour the new hue from my flesh while I was in the shower earlier. You don't need to be so self-conscious. Adam got up from the love seat and went to watch the rain that was falling on the fields behind the house. No one is judging you, and no one is disgusted by you. You're your own worst enemy. I had not expected that. At all. I had to stop and think for a moment. Why was I so harsh with myself? I mean, there was Nate's initial freakout and Adam's unintentional staring, but no one else had said anything about it. Granted, no one had really seen me like this until today, and I'd always prided myself on being different and standing out from the crowd. I definitely stood out now. Well, I'm going to go find something to eat. Think about what I said. Adam finally spoke when I couldn't find the words to rebut. I just nodded silently as he walked back in the house and left me alone with my own insecurities. Adam Bodine. I found myself some lunch before wolfing it down and wandered around the inside of the house for an hour. I peeked in on Violet, who was still sitting alone, curled up in the sunroom with her face to her knees. She was really having a hard time adjusting to her transformation. Henri returned around late afternoon with Leo in tow. They made me gather Violet and brought everyone back into the dining room so they could get started on using the diviner. Sit, all of you. Josiah held the aubergine globe in his hand with a layer of satin in between. I pulled out a seat for Violet and joined the table next to her as everyone else gathered about for Henri's demonstration. Josiah set the globe out on the table and everyone leaned in to get a better look. Well, it sure is pretty. Medusa crossed her arms over her chest as she pursed her lips. Pretty nothing. This baby will show you your destiny. Henri puffed his chest up at Medusa. I could feel Violet begin to shake next to me. Apparently she didn't like what Henri had just said. Either way, let's give it a try. Take it to Violet first. Josiah directed Henri to pick it up and deliver it elsewhere. I've already used the bleeding thing. I won't do it again. Violet wasn't kidding. No one was going to make her do anything. Josiah looked like he wanted to fight, but he kept his mouth shut. I watched him reach under the table and fiddle with the backside of his pants. What had Violet done to him? Then Adam can go. Josiah nudged Henri as he brought the orb over to me. I'm going to spot you in case you react like Violet did. Henri spoke in a hushed tone as he offered me the globe on a silk mantle. I didn't know what I was going to see. Did I even want to? I had to if we were ever going to find out what had happened to us. Henri still waited as I reached out my fiery hands and scooped the orb up. Instant darkness. I was floating in a thick liquid, too tiny to even move on my own. A prick of a needle caused me to flinch, but I really didn't feel anything. The insides of my all-too-small body felt like they wanted to burst forth, but the red film that formed around me kept that from happening. Time sped up, and before I knew it, I was being born, and then I was being adopted by my mother, at least the only mother I ever knew. I watched myself grow into a young man and then spiral out of control when Mom died. The drugs, the sex, the crazy parties, and all the laws I broke, the mess I made of my life, and then the steady rebuild once I hit rock bottom. Then there was the transformation into the fire beast I had become, the fog swirling around my body as I fought it, but failed. I saw it on a cellular level, watching as the microscopic barrier that coated each and every one of the cells in my body dissolved. As the red film faded away, something inside the cells was activated and they began to multiply at a rapid rate. The pain was immeasurable, but my body was ready for it. They kept proliferating until my body couldn't take it anymore, leaving me forever changed on more than just an atomic level. My eyes had been closed when I let go of the orb. Henri was there to make sure nothing happened to his diviner as I sat back in my chair, brow furrowed. "What did you see, Adam?" Josiah eyed me warily. My conception all the way to the transformation. I was still mulling all the information over in my head. "And? Was there any pertinent information?" Josiah seemed impatient. "I was injected with something after conception, but I don't know what it was. Other than that, the only thing that stood out was the actual transformation. I watched this. It was some sort of membrane around the cells in my body. It just faded away, and every fiber of my being began to multiply. I can't explain it the way I saw it, but something happened to us. I couldn't wrap my head around the visions. What the hell was I?" "And what had you seen, Violet?" Josiah now turned his attention back to her. "Armageddon. And I saw children, hundreds of them, growing up to become monsters. No other details besides that." Violet shrugged. She didn't seem like she wanted to answer any of Josiah's questions. "Maybe you should use it again." Josiah was challenging her despite his knowledge of what she was capable of. "Maybe you should hold it. If it has to do with destiny, and we came to you for help, that means our destinies are intertwined." Violet smiled. She was going to make him work for it. There was fury in Josiah's eyes of Violet's defiance. He looked like he was going to hex her where she sat, but I saw the flash in that large violet eye and Josiah backed down. "Well, then, what about you, Leo? What did the blood sample tell us?" Josiah left the violet issue alone and moved on to the next idea. "I don't understand it. Samples of haxanite, iridium, augite, phenethyl alcohol, geraniol, and B-citronellol." Leo had this baffled look on his face as he read off a piece of paper. "In layman's terms, Leo, none of us understand all of that." Josiah waved him off. "It's made up of rosewater and star stuff, minerals from meteorites. It's as if someone made that man, or whatever it was, out of clay from meteorite minerals and rosewater," Leo explained, dropping his paper to the table. Everyone was speechless. Even Violet, who had fought the man, wasn't expecting that answer. "I literally have nothing to say." Medusa lifted her shoulders. "Why rosewater?" Violet blurted. At least someone was asking a good question. "I have no idea." Leo was just as bewildered as the rest of us. "There has to be some sort of occult use for rosewater." Violet's brain worked lightning fast. "Well, yes, there is, but we use it for love spells, but that doesn't make any sense in this case." Cassandra answered her instead. "Catholics use it for consecration," Jackie pointed out. Maybe that was it. "We will have to look more into it, but for now we need some peace and quiet for divination." Josiah was still surly as he eyed Violet. I rose from my seat, but not before Violet had shoved her chair back and hastily exited the dining room. Josiah really made her mad, and I hoped for his sake that he got back on her good side. I knew I would find her in the sunroom. She had claimed it as her own. Violet heard me open the door and got up to face me. "Do you think I'm a murderer too?" She had clearly been crying. "No, not at all. You were just defending yourself, and based on that blood sample, I'm not even sure what you killed was even human." The words sounded funny coming out of my mouth. "It was some sort of homunculus or golem. I know it wasn't human, but how dare he?" Violet was mostly talking aloud, but she had a point. "What do you know about golems and homunculi?" I was rather amused that she had even heard of such things. "I'm a writer, Adam, or I was a writer." Violet turned away from me and curled back up on the love seat. "I'd have to write under a pen name indefinitely now." She was trying to joke, but I could tell that she was hurting over all of this. "We'll figure out a way to make this work." I took a seat across from her. "We? You want to join me as I wallow in my own self-pity? Or would it be self-loathing?" Violet's outlook was rather cynical. "You can't keep looking at it that way. Let's not talk about what we've become and instead talk about figuring out who made us this way," I suggested, trying to turn the bad of the situation into something productive. "Okay then. Tell me about what you saw. Give me details." Violet was suddenly interested in having a conversation. "The thing that stood out to me the most was being injected with something. There was no specific detail. I just know that it happened." I couldn't get any more precise than that. Wait, if you were injected with something after conception, that would mean you weren't conceived naturally. They would have had to do that in a petri dish. Violet saw something that I had overlooked. It was the writer side of her, I was sure. I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't been conceived naturally. I wasn't, I replied. Violet looked surprised that she was right, but urged me to go on. You can't tell Henri. You can't tell anyone. I've been digging into my past, trying to find out who my birth mother was, and I did. Violet's eyes were wide in anticipation as she listened closely. She was a very sad woman. Nothing to her name, for the most part, no family to speak of, and fresh out of an abusive relationship. Somehow she caught wind of a fertility clinic that was doing some sort of scientific study, and they were looking for women to donate ovum for their work. The payout was 10 grand. She jumped at the opportunity, and they deemed her fit for their study, so they had her sign paperwork, and she began going once a month and letting them harvest a few ovum at a time. Eventually, they wanted to harvest in bulk, and had her sign some more paperwork, promising her more money. Of course, she agreed. She had nothing. They told her they needed to put her under for the new procedure because it was a little more invasive. My birth mother woke up with no real side effects from the procedure, went on her merry way, and about a month later, she found out she was pregnant. Violet was listening intently. She gasped when I finished my sentence. Anyway, she went back and complained, like you do when a fertility lab randomly impregnates you without your permission, but apparently it was detailed in the second round of paperwork. She just didn't bother to read all of it. They made her carry the baby to term, as per the contract, and then they took it. Apparently, she didn't want it anyway. Eventually, I ended up in foster care when I was 2, and after being there 6 months, Mom found me. Henri was 5 and couldn't have been happier to have a little brother. Little did anyone know that this would be the result of that forced pregnancy. I suddenly felt a bit self-conscious myself. So you were created in a lab, but I was conceived naturally. There's no correlation. I'm still kind of hoping that we are mutants or something. A little bit of light now shone in Violet's eyes. What is your obsession with mutants? I remember her asking me if I was one the day before. Ryder! Violet rolled her eyes and stood to stretch when Henri entered the room. There's pizza if you all are hungry. He held 2 boxes in his hand, so fresh they were still steaming. That actually sounds perfect right about now. I got up and took a box, extracting a slice as I let it dangle to my mouth. We can go eat on the front porch. It's nice out tonight. Henri gestured for us to follow him. Violet looked undecided at first, but eventually followed. Food in our bellies would do us some good after the hectic day we had. Violet Eve. They wanted to do some more private divinatory work, which means I had to go. Henri was talking to Adam as we sat down in the rocking chairs on the front porch. He passed out slices of doughy pizza as he spoke. Of course it did. Adam kicked back and started eating another slice as I nibbled on mine and listened. Josiah was insistent. Henri sounded bitter as he munched on a slice of Supreme. Why do you let him push you around like that? I blurted suddenly. Josiah's snide comments and holier-than-thou attitude had been getting on my nerves all day. He was anything but kind to Henri. Henri was surprised by my outburst, and he opened and closed his mouth a few times before finally speaking. It's my punishment. Henri hung his head as he set his slice down on top of the cardboard box. Punishment for what? Dating Cassandra while she was perfectly single? He's just jealous because she chose you over him. Adam sneered. Clearly, he was just as agitated with Josiah as I was. That, and I cheated on Medusa. I was messing up the energetic balance in the group because I couldn't control myself. Henri looked disappointed in himself. You're better than that, Henri. Regardless of what he says to you, don't take it to heart. Josiah seems like an old bitter twat anyway. I threw in my 2 cents and the men laughed. She's not wrong. Adam slapped his knee, jarring the pizza box that was perched in his lap. It began to tumble to the ground in slow motion, but I stopped it. It was just a knee-jerk reaction, but I somehow paused the box mid-fall. It was just dangling there in the air. I still can't get over that. Adam picked the box up and grabbed another slice. You can't get over it? I scoffed. There was no control. I wasn't consciously controlling anything. My emotions were. Josiah still wants you to use the diviner. Henri broke the tension with more tension. I don't want to use it again. Adam and I already talked about what I saw, and that was enough for me. I could still play the scene over and over in my head. It was that fresh. It may help us figure out what happened to you and Adam, though. You know that this probably isn't a coincidence. There are more of you out there. Henri posed an idea that hadn't even crossed my mind. What if Adam and I weren't the only ones? You think there are more of us? I was baffled. How many? Why? Where did we all come from? Yes, based on what I saw at the cemetery, I think your friend Missy is one too. That statement floored me even though I had already considered it. We did have the same birthday, and her reaction to the fog at the party sort of clinched it. I didn't want it to be true because if it was, Missy had been forever changed. And for the worse. What did it do to her? I spoke aloud, not really asking anyone in particular. I don't know why she reacted differently than us. You were pretty crazy in the beginning, but that has seemed to die down now. Adam turned to me in his chair. I had to know. I had to know why we turned, why we mutated, what happened to my best friend. The thought would drive me mad if I didn't figure it out. I want to use the diviner again. I wasn't even thinking, but that seemed to be working best for me. Then let's go. I'm sure Josiah will be more than pleased. Henri set his pizza box down and started to get up. I don't want to use it in front of an audience. We do it in private. I insisted. There was no way I was going to have Josiah breathing down my neck while I used that thing again. Josiah isn't going to like that. Adam shook his head. I smiled. Then he doesn't have to know. Night had fallen and Josiah, as well as the others, had gone off to drink in the parlor. We knew that then would be the perfect time to use the diviner, after they were all good and warm with liquor in their bellies. Quick, inside. Henri led me and Adam through the cracked door to the dining room, and clicked it shut behind us. I could see the Destiny diviner encased in a bookshelf up against a back window. The indigo liquid inside it coursed about, even though there was nothing in the room to cause the movement. Henri pulled it from the case, still enveloped in its silk cloth, and held it out in front of me. Are you sure you want to do this? Adam was so close I could smell the sulfur that clung to his beard. I have to. One of us isn't enough. I was just staring at the swirling orb, wondering what it would show me this time. We will be right here if anything happens. Promise you won't go running out on us this time? Henri smirked, bringing the orb closer to me. I promise. Things can't be scarier than they already are. I gently extended my hands and let them slip under the glass orb. As I pulled it close to my chest, I felt myself being pulled far away. I saw my mother, Rain Quirk, standing in the middle of what looked like a medical room. She had on a white hospital gown, and her auburn hair was pulled back from her face, which was just as I remembered. A man appeared in the room, and an exam table scooped my mother up. Her legs were up in stirrups as the man, who I now assumed was a doctor, slid his chair in front of her so I couldn't see her any longer. Nurse, the doctor called out, and a woman wheeled a cart into the room and stopped in front of him. I had to get a closer look, feeling my toes drag along the tile floor as my body drifted closer to the vision. This will only hurt a second. The nurse smiled down at my mother as she inserted an IV into her wrist and set up bags of fluid. She then pushed a syringe full of fluid into the PICC line. Now, Miss Quirk, this procedure is more complicated than most considering her history, so we will be putting you to sleep. If all goes well, you will know whether you are pregnant or not within a few weeks. The doctor spoke. Pregnant? Had my mother undergone in vitro fertilization too? Everything looks okay? I heard my mother's voice. That sweet, angelic voice. Yes, ma'am. Now relax. The doctor suggested. I knew my mother was under anesthesia when the doctor began to work, giving orders to the nurse to assist him. I wanted to watch to see what they were doing, but I was pulled away again and thrust into another vision. Things were the total opposite of that white room here. Everything was inky black and the walls seemed to crawl around me. In a flash of blinding light, Leather Trousers appeared in front of me, taller than ever. His piercing blue eyes bore a hole straight through me as he towered in the middle of the room. In a flurry of broken feathers and a sound like a million birds taking flight, Leather Trousers threw out his arms. Giant wings made of blinding white feathers burst forth from his back with a wingspan so large that they encompassed the entire room. The veins in his arms flexed as he commanded his wings to begin flapping, the room swirling with down feathers and a powerful light that made my third eye burn. The visage of the beautiful man in front of me, with the giant wings, slowly melted into a skeletal beast with legs bent backward like some sort of bird. The trousers had shredded away, and a cloak of black now slithered around the bony frame of the once glowing figure. I opened my mouth to scream as I was swept up in the whirlwind created by the flapping wings. I was jolted back to reality when I heard glass breaking. The third eye darted about for the source of the sound when I found the Destiny Diviner, shattered into 1,000 pieces at my feet, the liquid inside it quickly seeping into the rug. I wasn't even standing by the window anymore. I was across the room by a box on the mantel. "Henri," I started, instantly feeling bad that I had destroyed his precious diviner. I turned my shoulder to find him and Adam still standing by the bookshelf, the look on their faces one of pure bewilderment. When they snapped out of the initial shock, Adam came rushing over to my side as Henri realized what happened. "I can make another one, Violet." He came over to check on me too. "What did you see?" How did I get over here? I wasn't ready just yet to talk about what I had seen. I wanted to know how I got to where I was first. "You were just standing there with your eyes closed, all free, and then you wandered off towards the fireplace. We tried to stop you, but you fucking locked us up." Adam looked alarmed. What do you mean, locked you up?" I had no idea what he was talking about. "Every joint in our body froze. We couldn't move at all," Henri explained. Apparently there was an important reason I ended up over here. "What did you take from the box?" Adam asked. I hadn't realized that I had been holding the diviner in only one hand, probably the reason why I dropped it. My other hand was balled up into a fist at my side so tight that my knuckles were almost white. "You're bleeding." Henri pushed past Adam and reached out to grab the hand that was still clenched tightly at my side. There indeed was blood running down my wrist. It had even stained the white dress I wore. I held my hand out and relaxed its grip. My fingers unfolded to reveal a corked glass vial, shattered just like the orb. But the blood on my hand wasn't mine. "That's the rest of the blood sample we took from the front drive." Adam's breathing had quickened. He knew I had seen something. The vision must have shifted gears when something deep inside of me took hold and led me over to that blood sample, the blood of whatever atrocity had tried to kill me earlier. That blood showed me what I had been up against. A man too great to be human, a man with giant bird wings, a man that transformed into a monster skeleton cloaked in black. "I know what it was," I breathed, the information finally piecing itself together in my brain like a giant puzzle. The thing that attacked you?" Adam wanted an answer. "Yes." I wanted to just say it, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate with my brain. Well, what was it?" Henri was getting impatient himself. I looked down at my bloody palm, the strange, inhuman life force soaking into my dress and staining my skin. How was any of this even possible? Adam and Henri waited with bated breath for my answer as I was finally able to give it to them. An angel. An angel of death. As you just heard, I clearly decided to retell this issue in one single podcast episode. I do apologize if it's a tad long. Do you guys prefer longer or shorter stories from the Archives episodes? Let me know on Facebook. You can find me there at facebook.com/theoccultarchives. I'm also on Instagram at the Occult Archives Podcast and on my website, author-emmoon.weebly.com. You can also become a member of the Archives on Buy Me a Coffee for as little as $3 a month, or you can just tip me and buy me a book for as low as $1. The more you interact with me on social media, the more likely it is for me to be seen, and that helps bring you more spooky content. But that's all for tonight's Stories from the Archives episode. Until next time, lock your doors, salt your windows, and remember, it's okay to sleep with the lights on.